Good Monday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock. Time for Sports4CLE. Plenty to talk about today. A little later in the show, Matt Dery from 92.3 The Fan and the Dery Brothers Guardians Cast will join us. We'll talk a little bit of Guardians baseball. Plenty of Browns to talk about. Eddie McDonald from Dawg Daily will join us a little bit. And we begin by talking Deshaun Watson. Over the weekend, we found out that Deshaun Watson's hearing with Sue L. Robinson will in fact start tomorrow, Tuesday. Albert Breer appearing on the Dan Patrick Show on what he has heard will happen during this hearing.
The sides have an idea of what everybody's going to be presenting. And, I think the league has been strident in wanting a year suspension. My understanding is that the settlement talks collapsed over the league's insistence on a year suspension. And now they're going to be looking for something indefinite where he'd have to apply to get back in after a year. And then the union is going to ask for much lighter punishment on the basis of the league's case not being as strong as a lot of people think it is. And the key component to the union's case is the league tomorrow is only going to be bringing the cases of 5 women. So we've heard about the 24 women who've sued and obviously other women who've alleged wrongdoing on the part of Watson. But the league is only going to be bringing the cases of 5 women tomorrow. And then, of course, the union's case is that based on that and based on what we've seen with owners like Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, and especially Dan Snyder, a year suspension is way too much. And then, after that, I think, as you know, she'll take that under advisement, make a recommendation on penalty, and then it'll either go to the commissioner or his designee.
Again, that is what will happen with the hearing tomorrow for Deshaun Watson. NFL, NFLPA, Watson's representatives getting together and basically giving what they have to say to Sue L. Robinson, the NFL's disciplinary officer. More news as Tony Busby, the attorney for the defendants, says today they filed the first case of what will likely be many against Houston Texans related to Deshaun Watson's behavior. There is overwhelming evidence collected indicating that the Houston Texans enabled Watson's behavior. They also believe that the Texans knew or most certainly should have known of Watson's conduct. And they believe that the cases will speak for themselves. In response to that, Josina Anderson tweets out a Texans statement. We're aware of the lawsuits filed today against the Texans. Since March 2021, they fully supported and complied with law enforcement. Various investigations will continue to take the necessary steps to address the allegations against the Houston Texans organization. With that, let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. So, Tim, a couple of things to unpack there. Texans now involved in the suit. Another reason for the NFL to want to get this behind them. And you hear the NFL pretty intent about getting a significant suspension for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that's been pretty evident, obviously, that, that's been the reporting for more than a week plus out there is the NFL wants the year plus suspension minimum. And obviously, it has been bad PR for the NFL for Deshaun Watson, and I think the one good thing about this hearing being Tuesday is that we might be close to some closure. I think all the uncertainty is kind of what's causing a lot of concern and anger across the NFL and whatever, and maybe just getting some closure, something official as far as the suspension goes. That'll just put an end to a lot of this and kind of push this off to the side a little bit. And I think for the Browns, I think we're kind of past the point where we're not expecting a suspension. I'd be shocked, quite frankly, if there was no suspension. I think, the entire sports world would be pretty shocked at this point, considering all the cases against Deshaun Watson. I know he's settled a large portion of them, but they're still out there. All the information is still out there. We don't know what the NFL investigation has. And obviously the third-party arbitrator, Sue L. Robinson, she's the ultimate wild card because we have no idea, how she's going to rule. This is the first time the NFL has set this situation up as far as, having a third party determine whether or not a player is in violation of the personal conduct policy. And we don't know how she's going to rule because we don't have any basis for it. So it's just going to be fascinating to see what kind of comes down. Obviously, if she says there's no finding of anything to violate the policy on Watson's part, there will be no suspension. The NFL can't do anything about that. If there is, then we get into the whole complicated dance of, how long is this suspension going to be? This whole back and forth between the NFL and the Players Association, that's got the potential, I think, to get pretty messy if the owners are not willing to budge off that 1 year minimum.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And in fact, the only way that Roger Goodell doesn't have the final say is if Sue L. Robinson comes back and says there's no violation of the personal conduct code, there is no suspension. Otherwise, Roger Goodell or his designee has the final say so. All right, along those lines, Jeff Darlington from ESPN, the KJM show, talking about what he has heard as far as the length of suspension. And does anybody really know?
To me, it's tough to put a finger on it at this point, only because throughout this process for the past several months, we've heard so many different things. I mean, at one point, a couple months ago, it was, the talk around the league was it's expected to be a light suspension. And then that obviously has also shifted toward feeling like it could be heavier. Look, I think it's very tough to tell only because behind the scenes, the legal process of this has been so fluid. I mean, not but a few weeks ago, we had 2 more added cases of women alleging improper conduct by Watson with civil lawsuits. So, and then again, more recently, most of those lawsuits have been settled. So very difficult to say exactly how Robinson is going to rule. Certainly, a year suspension should not be treated as something unlikely. Then again, it's quite honestly, Keyshawn, it's just tough to guess.
And again, nobody knows. The other thing, Tim, that I would say is adding the Texans into these also affects it. Texans are part of the NFL. So that will factor into what Sue L. Robinson looks at.
Yeah, just like I was saying earlier, it's really become more convoluted as time has gone on, even since those grand jury no bills out of the state of Texas and in Harrison, Brazoria County. Since those passed, it seems like it's only gotten muddier. And, with just those talks, Albert Breer was referencing about the settlement breaking down. I feel like it's the NFLPA almost, if they're going to dare the NFL to go ahead and drop the full year suspension, because I would imagine a lawsuit could be coming. I mean, because as Albert Breer mentioned, Daniel Snyder, Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, those 3 owners were involved in, similar situations, and they got basically no punishment. And according to the code of conduct in the NFL, the owners are held up to an extremely high standard, about as much as the players are. So you kind of get into double standard territory. Well, why do these guys get a free pass and Deshaun Watson gets a year suspension or whatever? It could get very messy if they don't agree to something and come up with some middle ground there. Because the last thing I think the NFL wants, considering all this Deshaun Watson stuff, considering what's happened in Congress, the last thing anybody wants is for this to go back into court and for this to drag out a little longer. And the more I've thought about this, I know a year suspension sounds bad for the Browns, but if it's one of those suspensions where the contract tolls over into next season and then you still have the full 5 years, maybe that's not as much as you kind of would be throwing away the 2022 season. It wouldn't be the worst thing. I think the worst thing would be if it was like a 12, 13 game suspension, whereas you would kind of render this season inconsequential for the Browns, where Jacoby Brissett or somebody else would be playing a majority of the games, and you're not expecting them to have much of a record. And then Deshaun Watson would be able to play the final few games, and then there goes year 1 of his contract. And then into year 2, which would be next season, he would have a far more significant cap hit than he has right now.
All right, before we go to break, this is something to keep in mind as well. This is from a Charles Robinson article from Yahoo Sports. NFL wanted the public to know that it was pushing for a year suspension, and this goes with what you're saying. I think there's a reason it's getting around, because that's what the NFL wants, a source told Yahoo Sports. What if the arbitrator looks at everything and comes back with a 10-game suspension? If everyone knows the league wanted a 1-year suspension, it gives the NFL the ability to say, we sought a tougher penalty, but we're also not going to undercut a collectively bargained process that this arbitrator has a first big case either. So it does make sense that would be a reason the NFL would be putting out everywhere. Well, now it's an indefinite suspension. Now it's a 1-year suspension. It's kind of as a fallback saying, look, we collectively bargained this. We wanted more. We thought he should have got more.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a change up from the years past where the commissioner has been the judge and the jury as far as delivering those punishments to, players and coaches or whatever in these suspensions. I would imagine, this first case in particular, we don't, again, like I said earlier, Sue L. Robinson, the former U.S. judge, is the wild card in this. We have no idea how she's going to go with this, where she's going to lean, because there's no track record. But I would imagine, because of just the tenuous nature that always happens in CBA negotiations and whatever, that maybe it would behoove the league to just kind of let this play out, let her make the determination on this, because I think the last thing the NFL wants, again, is bad PR, where they agreed to this third-party arbitration for deciding punishments and suspensions, and then one case in, they go, wait a minute, we don't like this. This isn't right. We want to change this, whatever. Maybe. So I get where the NFL is coming from and saying they wanted the year suspension out of these leaks and these rumors and whatever, because they want to come out looking tough, and it makes perfect sense why they want to do that. I mean, the question is always just going to be where this lies, and reality is always somewhere in the middle. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I mean, at this point, still, we're all just guessing where this is going to end up.
Yeah, but there is the perception that, like you said, if they change it completely, if Roger Goodell comes back and reinstates a harder penalty, it looks like the whole thing with the Players Association was a PR stunt to collectively bargain that third-party arbitrator. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the side of the break. We will continue talking Browns. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, this one about the quarterback situation. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Tim Bielik and I continue talking Browns. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns quarterback situation.
Hey, gentlemen. Mike here. It seems to me that it's a high probability we're going to have Deshaun Watson not play football this year. So has the brain trust in Cleveland thought this through enough to have an answer for this? Who will be our quarterback? We are built to win this year. I don't think Jacoby Brissett is going to take us to the Super Bowl, which is where we should go with the roster the way it is if we had a good quarterback. So any ideas as to who might be out there or who we're going to get to play quarterback for the Browns? Thank you. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, the obvious one is Jimmy Garoppolo because he's out there kind of in a lame duck situation, much like Baker Mayfield. The guy I keep throwing out there, and nobody's biting on it yet, is Teddy Bridgewater, who is a backup for Tua in Miami, only making $6.5 million. There's a little bit of familiarity between him and Kevin Stefanski, not a ton, but enough that they would feel good about him.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if we're going to be clear about this, if Deshaun Watson is suspended for a large majority of the season, no quarterback they get is going to take him to the Super Bowl. It's way more likely than not going to be, not going to happen. I mean, Deshaun Watson would be the key to the Browns going to the Super Bowl, just because obviously you need the quarterback to give you the best chance to get there. Without him, it would be a very, very, very slim chance. Now, Jacoby Brissett's at least solid enough to get the job done. I think if you're talking Jimmy Garoppolo, Teddy Bridgewater instead of Jacoby Brissett, I think that gives you at least a better chance to get into the playoffs. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater coming in as a veteran, I think obviously, time in Minnesota, Kevin Stefanski knows him pretty well. I think there'd be familiarity there. And with Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, you go from one zone blocking offensive scheme to another zone blocking offensive scheme. So I think that fit wouldn't be terrible. And I think if you're looking for quarterbacks kind of to keep things going, this year, if Deshaun Watson's suspended for the season or close to the season, you're just looking at guys going to keep the ship afloat, get you into the playoffs. I don't think we're in the days anymore where defense like the the Bears of the 80s or the Ravens of 2000, those defenses can't take you to a Super Bowl anymore. You got to have the quarterback, and if Deshaun Watson's not able to play this year, I think that those dreams might have to be pushed back at least a year.
All right, this comes from the Bleacher Report. Veteran free agent contracts the Browns must consider before training camp. They list 3 of them. Linval Joseph, a defensive tackle, wide receiver Will Fuller, and wide receiver Julio Jones. Of all of those, who you like? I'm a hard no on Julio Jones.
Between those 3 for me, I think it's Linval Joseph would be, for me, the guy. I mean, defensive tackle right now sticks out as the biggest weakness on this football team. They really don't have a proven guy as a quality starter at this point. They have prospects there with, Jordan Elliott, Tommy Togiai, Perrion Winfrey, who they just drafted this year. There's no known quantities, and I know Linval Joseph's an older player, but he's been to a couple Pro Bowls. He's a pretty good run-stopping defensive tackle. They just need a guy who can kind of play first and second down, control the middle, kind of plug things up. And Linval Joseph is pretty good at slowing down the run game, which I think would be all they would need from him. You don't need him to rush the pass or anything like that. Just kind of clog up the middle, free things up for the defensive ends on both sides, the linebackers behind you, whatever, to rally to the football. And we know, obviously, with who the Browns face in the division this year with Pittsburgh and Baltimore, those teams are going to run the football a lot. So maybe I think between those 3 guys, I would go for the guy who's going to be able to impact you the most. And for me, that's Joseph.
All right, so let's turn our attention a little bit to Baker Mayfield. I'm going to give you a couple of things here, a couple of elements. So this is from NFL Rumors. They tweet out that the Seahawks have turned up their pursuit to trade with the Browns for Baker Mayfield. Kind of interesting. All right, now let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This is from one of the biggest supporters of Baker Mayfield that we know, a Sooner fan. Let's listen to his thoughts.
Hey, Dave, you know who I am. I don't have to say anything about that. I've got a new take on what people said about if Baker Mayfield would have sat out like Joe Burrow and that he'd be the starting quarterback and everything be fine and dandy. The reason why is I heard Jimmy Haslam talk about Deshaun Watson, how he's the future of the team, how you rarely ever get a chance to take a 26-year-old elite quarterback like that. And so he laid out basically all the golden eggs that he had in his basket. Now, I don't blame him. That's what he wants to do. The only problem is that baggage isn't going to go away. People haven't forgot Ray Rice. They haven't forgot Ben Roethlisberger. You may put it in the back of your mind. But what about if Deshaun Watson gets hurt? That could probably be a possibility. As always, I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you. Goodbye.
As always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. The other thing, Tim, is you could say that about any quarterback, running back, wide receiver in the NFL. What if they get hurt? Yeah, it's really interesting. Now, before we wrap up our Baker Mayfield and get your thoughts on this one's kind of interesting as well. Mike Florio proposes a 3-way trade with Baker Mayfield. Browns sending Mayfield to the Panthers. Panthers sending a draft pick or two to the 49ers. 49ers sending Garoppolo to Cleveland. The question of paying Mayfield's $18.8 million guaranteed salary continues to complicate any such situations. It's important to note Garoppolo has a bigger number, like at almost $27 million. So what are your thoughts? All of that Baker Mayfield stuff that we threw out there for you.
Well, I'll start with the 3-team thing. That would be very interesting. I don't know if it would happen because, I mean, unless Deshaun Watson is getting suspended for the season and the Browns know his contract's going to toll into next season where the cap hit would only still be a couple $1 million and the Browns would still have like $80 million or whatever in the all season. Unless that were to happen, I don't know if a Garoppolo thing would work because they don't want to pay Baker $18.9 million if he's not the starter. So why would they want to pay Jimmy Garoppolo $25 million unless he's a starter? That's really the only way in which I think that would even be kind of a possibility. And I'm going to kind of go backwards here. So what the caller was saying about, the health of Baker, we'll never know. I think that's the ultimate what if out of all of this is what if Baker doesn't get hurt, or what if he sits out after the game against Houston in week 2? What if he doesn't play it down this season? Say the Browns go 7-10 with Case Keenum, and everyone's last memories of Baker are, he had that interception against the Chiefs, but also remember that he took them to the playoffs the year prior. They won a playoff game with him at quarterback. That would kind of really create more of a question as far as who Baker is as a pro quarterback versus what we have now, which is kind of a clearer picture that maybe he's not on the same level as Deshaun Watson. And when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks, I think this is kind of, no surprise that maybe they would kind of sneak in. I mean, remember, their quarterback room is Drew Lock and Geno Smith. I don't know how that's not inspiring much confidence. Unless they're going to be one of the teams kind of in the mix for C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or one of those quarterbacks in the 2023 draft. I don't know how you could sell that to your team if you're the Seahawks, saying that, Baker may be out there, but, they're going to stick with the guys they have. And remember, they got two of the better receivers in football, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, you got to placate. And you don't want to make either of those guys disappointed. I mean, I'm sure for all of Baker Mayfield's problems, they'd rather have Baker throwing them the football than Drew Lock and Geno Smith, who have really shown no level of consistent NFL success at any point in their careers.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Don't forget Noah Fant is over there too, tight end, really talented young tight end that they acquired in the Russell Wilson trade. Tim Bielik, man, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Tim Bielik. Make sure you read him, page of the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Eddie McDonald from Dawg Pound Daily will join us. We'll hear a little bit more about some of the keys to that Deshaun Watson hearing that's starting tomorrow. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Jeff Darlington from ESPN on the KJM show, talking about the process and the suspension hearing that will get underway tomorrow for Deshaun Watson.
It is obviously very important that tomorrow's hearing is taking place from the standpoint that this does at least produce some feel of finality, that this will be the final step before we find out what Sue Robinson decides. But we shouldn't really claim to know too much, because this is the first time that Robinson has been in a role that's really quite new to the NFL as well. She doesn't have any precedent here, any experience with NFL litigation like this, like with disciplinary processes. So whether this means that she'll rule right away, whether it means she'll take into account what the NFL and the NFLPA, or whether it means she already knows exactly what she's going to do, all remains to be seen. So it's very important, yes, but also something that we'll learn as we go through this process exactly what it means.
And again, the hearing, just the first step. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk talked about the key, and one of the things to keep an ear out for, the key as far as the Deshaun Watson suspension hearing that gets underway tomorrow.
The personal conduct policy, by its terms, says that owners are held to a higher standard. And as we've reported and as others have confirmed, the NFLPA is going to focus on Dan Snyder, the owner of the Commanders, Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, and Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys. Whether and to what extent they were investigated or disciplined for potential personal conduct policy violations of their own. So how do you begin to make that comparison? Because the argument will be that anything you do to Deshaun Watson has to be in fair proportion to what you did to them. Well, you don't just wave a magic wand and say it's proportional. You have to know what they did. Judge Robinson has to examine what they did. What did the league conclude? What did the league do to investigate? What did the league do to decide whether or not there will be discipline? What text messages or emails or other conversations may have occurred on the question of whether or not we're even going to look into it? These are important considerations. To truly make a fair comparison between Deshaun Watson and those three owners, some evidence is going to be needed. Some documents will need to be gathered and reviewed. And if Judge Robinson goes that way, if Judge Robinson tells the Shield that it's going to have to open up the documents, the files, the evidence, and share with the NFLPA things that it has tried desperately, especially as it relates to the Commanders, to keep hidden, that's not going to go over well.
With that, let's welcome in Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. And Eddie, that's a very, very valid point. If in fact the Players Association gets those documents, it's not going to make the NFL and Roger Goodell very happy.
No, it certainly isn't, and I don't see how that hurts Deshaun Watson's case in any way. I think it helps it tremendously. As Florio stated there, the punishment is supposed to be more severe for the owners because they're held to a higher standard than the players are. And if this comes to it, then that's a good chance for Deshaun to see minimal, if any, suspension. I do think he will get suspended ultimately. I do not know the amount of games. I'm not going to pretend like I do. Nobody does at this point. But yeah, if the NFLPA gets their hands on those documents, the league could be in for a world of trouble because they have been trying to hide a lot of things with the Commanders' investigation and the ongoings of that. So this could be very well suited for Deshaun and his defense team. We'll find out a little bit more tomorrow.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about football. This is from Dog Pound Daily. 3 defensive tackles the Browns should add before camp. A couple of them will be familiar names. Number 3, Danny Shelton, one-time Browns draft pick. Number 2, Sheldon Richardson, former Brown. And number 1, Ndamukong Suh. Suh not going to be re-signed by the Buccaneers. Leading candidates appear to be the Raiders. Do you like any of those? Do you see any of those potentially happening, or do you think they're going to go with the young guys?
I like all 3 if they were able to sign one here either before camp or as camp starts, or if someone, God forbid, goes down with an injury. I do like Richardson just a little bit more than the other 2 just because he has familiarity within Joe Wood's system from a couple seasons ago. He left because he wanted more money. The Browns waited till after the draft and then waited till they have minimal funds, offered him a more of a team-friendly deal for them, and he did not like that, so he took his talents elsewhere. I don't know if any of these guys actually get signed. I do think that the Browns are going to roll with the young crew. Plus, as we've talked about on here a bunch of times, Clowney can move over to the interior for different packages. Chase Winovich could do the same thing. They have Taven, Taven Bryan, who I believe is going to be pretty good this year as well for the Browns. So they might just roll with that. We'll see. But I would take Richardson over these three just because of the familiarity within Joe Wood's system.
All right, so this is also from Doug Poundale. It's kind of interesting. 4 best pairings on the Browns roster. And a little different than you might think. Number 4, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, the running backs. Number 3, Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, the defensive ends. Number 2, cornerbacks, Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. And number 1, David Njoku and Harrison Bryant. Take us through your thoughts on these.
So we'll start with the number 1 because I thought that was the most interesting one to me, and I didn't know how this was structured. I did not read this yet. I didn't know how whoever wrote this structured it. But I will say that intrigues me a lot because Njoku is now the lead tight end in the room. Harrison Bryant will now slide to number 2, where it was Njoku was 2 and Bryant was 3. Harrison Bryant has done tremendously well in his first couple of seasons. He has had trouble with some fumbles, so we will see if he can get that corrected, which I think he will if he's putting in the work. David Njoku looks like $1 million still. And now he gets an opportunity to shine as a number 1. He showed spurts of being a number 1 at different points, even with Austin Hooper on the roster. So I think that's very interesting dynamic that can play out. And I think both are in for big years. I think, Njoku can flirt with anything 800 or above yards and hopefully double-digit touchdowns. And I think Bryant is going to be a sneaky guy in the red zone because him and Njoku are both tall and both big targets for either Watson or Brissett or anyone else that could be in there. The pairing of Garrett and Clowney, that last year we saw 25 sacks between the two. Clowney liked playing alongside Garrett. Garrett liked playing alongside Clowney. He recruited him several times from the time the season ended to the time that he did sign. The cornerbacks, I'm real excited to see what they do. I'm real excited to see what Newsome does in the slot if he's going to be there more so this year. I'm excited to see what Greedy Williams does this year, too, because I think this is going to be a big year for him. And we've talked about it on here. I don't know if he necessarily comes back. I think he might outplay what the Browns are going to be willing to offer him next year. Hopefully not. Hopefully he has a tremendous season and he's able to stay with us long term. But that's very interesting. I'm excited to see that trio, not just the pairing, but that trio of players. So, yeah, and then the running backs, of course, the 1-2 punch, the best 1-2 punch in the NFL. I don't think that's very debatable. When healthy and they're both on the field, there's not really anyone stopping them. Even if you stack 8 in the box, Nick Chubb seems to get better the more people that are in the box. So, yeah, all interesting. But I really love that tight end pairing of Njoku and Bryan, seeing how they will do this year.
Yeah, young guys that could be ascending. Eddie McDonald from Dawg Poundale and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Again, about the quarterback situation. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns quarterback situation.
Hi, this is Tony Cross, 50-year Cleveland Browns fan. And I just got one thing to say is regarding Deshaun Watson's potential suspension. You know, even if Deshaun does get suspended for a full season and we appeal it, and just say he doesn't win the appeal, you know, we need to, as Browns fans, we need to realize that he's not on a 1-year contract. He's on I think it's a 5-year contract. So, you know, he got 4 more years to go out and kick butt. You know, the future is bright. Let's stop dealing with the here and now. Like, if he gets suspended, you know, the world is about to end. You know, we still have a bright future. We still have a lot of young players, and we still can go deep, I think, with Jacoby Brissett, deeper than we could if we had Baker Mayfield, because Jacoby is more cautious. He's bigger. He's stronger. He's a little faster, and he makes better decisions. You know, let's look at the big picture. You know, they went and got Deshaun, you know, anticipating that this might happen, but they see the future, you know, and that's all I'm trying to do. Have a good day.
All right, as always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. And if, in fact, it is a year suspension, it would be a 5-year contract. It is long-term. The one thing that I would say, Eddie, is it's tough to sell, you know, a non-elite quarterback. Jacoby Brissett is a really good backup, hasn't started a lot. It's tough to sell that to a team that expects to go to the Super Bowl, and, you know, especially the guys that are playing on the lines and kind of getting beat up every week. That's the only thing I would say about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that caller did make a good point. This isn't a 1-year rental for Deshaun Watson to see if he can. So if he is suspended for 1 year, that hopefully is the worst case scenario, and then he resumes his career next year, which then that would be 2 years off for him, but would also be 2 years without taking a hit. So that is something that's intriguing to me. But with Jacoby Brissett, there's a lot of speculation about what he is going to do, or if they're even going to keep him. And that you guys talked about trading for Jimmy Garoppolo earlier. I don't see that as a realistic possibility, especially when he's owed $25 million this year. Baker Mayfield is owed about $6 million less than that. So I don't see that being the case. But with Brissett, he has started about 37 games he started. So he hasn't had a lot of opportunities to do that, but he has been a good backup. And if he is suspended for the year, he's going to have to try and just be better than what Baker Mayfield was a season ago. A lot of people keep saying that, if he's out for the year, Watson, that is, then, you're not going to win many games with Brissett. It's going to be 3 or 4. But they also say they're going to waste the prime years of the players around Brissett, which is the best roster that he's had around him, in my opinion. That's disrespectful to those players, because it's like, yeah, you need an elite quarterback to win the whole thing, but you don't need an elite quarterback just to make the playoffs a lot of the time. We see that a lot every year. So I think Brissett can get them to the playoffs if he plays better than what Baker Mayfield did a season ago when he was hurt. He doesn't have to set the world on fire. He doesn't have to throw for 4,500 yards and 50 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. But he does have a good touchdown interception rate. He has 36 touchdowns to 17 career interceptions, 3-1, 3.5 to 1, that is, or 1.5. So it's a good rate. I think he can do well. I'm not going to go and bet the house on him winning a Super Bowl, but I would put $10 or $20 down on them winning 10 games at least.
Let's take a look at this. This kind of is Pro Football Focus 2022 NFL secondary rankings. And Tier 1, where do offenses even attack? They got the Ravens 1, the Buccaneers 2, the Browns 3rd. You got Ward, Newsome, Williams, Johnson, and Delpit. And rightly ranked among the tops in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm glad to see them finally get recognition, because Denzel Ward, he is one of the elite players in this league, and now he's the highest paid cornerback in the league. Greedy Williams, I think, like we talked about earlier, I think he's going to have a tremendous season. Whether that keeps him in Cleveland or that boosts his stock and he has to go elsewhere, because that is the nature of the NFL business. Greg Newsome, I'm very excited to see him play in year 2. He did a tremendous job as a rookie last year. Now he's going to move to the slot where he's embracing that role. Some players don't like moving around. They just like staying, outside or inside, whatever they are, they like staying there. He's open to doing whatever it is to help the team. And that's a huge sign. And he's going to be around the ball a lot more, making a lot more plays, a lot more tackles, hopefully getting a lot more interceptions. Delpit is interesting to me. This is basically his second year because his rookie year he tore his Achilles. Last year I thought he looked good for the most part after being removed for a year, and I think he can only build on that. And then you have John Johnson, who is one of the better safeties in the league. It might not have seemed like it last year at times, but towards the end of the season, he really stepped back up. And Ronnie Harrison, I think, is the key to all of this being make or break because in 2020, he was tremendous for most of the season. 2021, it seemed to start from game one against the Chiefs when he got ejected for putting his hands on the Chiefs coach. And then he sort of went downhill from there. He was very inconsistent. So it's going to be a big year for him. And I think that if he has a huge year, then that will just mean that the rest of the secondary is continuing to do that, and he's solidifying that.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about how deep that secondary is as well. You got Martin Emerson, who they picked in the 3rd round. You mentioned some of the safeties. A.J. Green played really well, graded out really well. It's not only the frontline guys, they have some depth to it.
And you need depth at the cornerback position in the NFL. We've seen it with the Browns for the past few years. Someone gets hurt, it seems like every year in the secondary. Ward gets banged up here and there. Delpit missed the whole season a couple years ago, his rookie season. So, yeah, the depth is key. And Martin Emerson, I'm excited to see what he can do in year one. I'm excited to see how they use him and his size. A.J. Green, I think he's been tremendous for the Browns the past few years, and he's really earned every ounce of playing time that he has got. So I'm very excited to see how those two perform. And maybe some bigger roles if need be. And A.J. Green, we've seen in the past couple of years that he has stepped up in big roles, and he has played some good defense on some good wide receivers in this league. So the depth is good. I'm glad that the Browns are getting recognition for this. So, yeah, you said earlier where to attack. I don't know where to attack. Maybe you have to run the ball more without the defensive tackles.
Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. Eddie, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff as always. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Eddie McDonald, make sure you read him, Dog Pound Daily. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we turn our attention to baseball. Guardians open up a 5-game series against the first-place Twins. The Guardians just 2 back. Matt Dery will join us on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
Indians starting the Guardians, I did it there. Guardians starting a 5-game series against the Twins, 2 games back in the American League Central. Let's take a look at the MajorLeague.com power rankings for the entire length of baseball. And the Guardians currently in the 10th spot. So you got the Yankees, Astros, Mets, Dodgers, Padres, Braves, Blue Jays, the Red Sox, who just swept the Guardians, Giants and Guardians. All right, with that, let's welcome in Matt Dery, 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Dery Brothers Guardian Cast. So what do you make of that? 10th in baseball, Matt?
Dave, it's great to see you. A bit surprising. I like it. Being a top 10 team, probably something on June 27th. Many Guardians, Tribe, whatever you want to call them, fans thought was going to happen, but here we are. And now a big series ahead with the Twins, but I think this club has some potential. The young guys are playing pretty well. Obviously a rough weekend, but the Red Sox are the third best team in the American League for a reason. And but 10, I think is pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, you mentioned the Red Sox. That's a really good offense, particularly the first 5 or 6 in that lineup can hit the ball. But you look at it, they get swept, the Guardians do. Bieber hangs a curveball, it's a 3-run homer, but the bullpen, let me read you these because we looked this up. 11 innings pitched, 18 hits, 10 earned, 15 walks. That's an 8.18 ERA. You got a great guy in the 9th inning, Clase. You got to figure a way to get from the 6th to the 9th to get him the ball.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. I think right now the bullpen has probably exceeded expectations from a statistical standpoint, kind of minus the stats that you brought up there. There's going to be a need at the deadline, Dave, to go get maybe 1 or 2 bullpen arms. God bless Brian Shaw. Great veteran leader and everything else, but putting him in high leverage situations right now is very dangerous. Plus, you've got some young guys that aren't used to this type of setting coming out of the bullpen. Eli Morgan's been fantastic, but he's a starter. He's a former starter in his first year really of learning how to be a bullpen guy. Same goes for Big Sam Hentges. So, while De Los Santos and a few others have been okay, I really think at the deadline, they've got to go get maybe 1 or 2 arms for that pen because right now down at Columbus, Sandlin's struggling, Karinchak struggling, Michalojak struggling. Those aren't guys I'm ready to be calling up yet. Unless there's one of the guys at AA that they want to convert to a relief pitcher, I think a David Bednar from the Pirates, a David Robertson from the Cubs is probably something that they're going to have to consider and rather quickly.
Yeah, and Kyle Barraclough from the Angels was just designated for assignment. That's a guy that was a closer for the Marlins, pitched for the Yankees. His ERA was only about 3, a little over 3. So that might be somebody that they try to bring in as a stopgap. But I'm with you. What other areas do you think need to be augmented?
Dave, I mean, you look at it, you say, well, are they going to trade for a bat at the deadline? I really like the depth, the organizational depth here. And so, 2 months ago, if you and I were talking about the outfield, we'd say, well, left field and right field, let's go. Let's add somebody. Well, now Stephen Kwan has been fantastic. Oscar Gonzalez looks like the right fielder of the future. Richie Palacios, when he plays, does pretty well. Miles Straw is a terrific defensive center fielder, but of course is not hitting right now. But I think right now, you got to look at the catching position. Austin Hedges defensively is fantastic. He's a leader, so well liked in that room, but hitting again below 200 and almost an automatic out, both he and Luke Maile. Wilson Contreras is a guy you got to look at. I know that, the Cherninetti duo of Mike Chernoff and Chris Antonetti, as I like to call them, they don't love rental players on one-year deals, but a Wilson Contreras from the Cubs, maybe in a package deal with David Robertson, the Cubs are going to deal those 2 guys. And the question is, will the Guardians be there to scoop them up? What would be the cost to go get them? But, a Sean Murphy from the A's who's got more years of control maybe is more realistic. But Wilson Contreras is a beast and a bat in that lineup that I think is desperately needed.
Matt Dery and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. A new minority owner. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about this 5-game set coming up with the Twins. Guardians start the night 2 behind them. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the young guys. Sports4CLE. Talking baseball again when we return. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Guardians baseball with Matt Dery from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Dery Brothers Guardian Cast. So the Guardians now have a new minority owner or minority investor. David Blitzer officially on board. Matt Colleague also part of that. And it is a minority investor with the option to become the majority owner within 5 to 6 years, or even sooner if the Dolans agree. So, Matt, this is a good thing. You know, a guy with deep pockets, and I know the fan base is upset with the Dolans. The one thing I would tell you, they put in place a really good minor league system and development. And from somebody that watched what went on in the 80s and 90s and before they got to the 90s where it was good, it's a good thing to have the stability in the minor league system in place.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. And I know the fans are complaining, Dave. They're complaining about the name change. They're complaining about the Dolans, the infamous Dolans cheap hashtag. But yet, here's an organization that has kept their president for years, and Chris Antonetti has kept their general manager for years, and Mike Chernoff has kept their manager, and Terry Francona. These guys don't leave. This organization is so bad, then why don't these guys bolt? They don't. And it's because they're allowed to do their jobs. And yes, the system is good, it's flourishing, but the fans want to see winning now. And I think what will help winning now, and even in the next year and the year after, is a minority owner like David Blitzer with deep pockets, not millionaire, but billionaire pockets, that maybe at the deadline will help the process along of helping Paul Dolan say, listen, you want Wilson Contreras, and he's going to want to get paid. Let's trade for him and extend him, or a bat that, you know, I'm not saying that they're going to make some blockbuster deal for Juan Soto or Ohtani, but at least maybe get in the conversation when you add David Blitzer. They have not been in the conversation the last few years because the last minority owner, John Sherman, bought the Royals, and there hasn't been any help financially. So this is a positive. And like you said earlier, Dave, I think that David Blitzer is going to be the majority owner way before we get to 5 years.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that was kind of the way it was set up. The other thing is you mentioned the organization. Other organizations keep pulling people out of this organization because it's so well run. You know, that tree is all over Major League Baseball. So we'll move on from that. 5-game series coming up for the Guardians with the Twins. It's really important. They're 2 back as they start. What are some things we need to see?
Well, first things first, they're going to need a big-time start tonight from Tristan McKenzie. The last time he faced Minnesota, he gave up a lot of home runs. He did not pitch well. Sonny Gray pitching tonight for the Twins has kind of been a thorn in the Guardians' side, even going back to his days with the Reds and Oakland, for that matter. So, big start for McKenzie tonight. The bullpen's a little bit taxed at the moment. I know that Morgan and Manny Clase are both rested, so that's a good sign. But it still starts with pitching. I know the lineup wasn't fantastic over the last 4 games. Ever since they scored 11 runs on Wednesday, I think they have about 7 or 8 runs total over the last 4 games after that. The hitters got to get going again, but I think tonight it starts with McKenzie. Doubleheader tomorrow. Hopefully Pilkington can pitch well and kind of a spot start. But it still comes down to run prevention and pitching. Got to kind of settle the pen down a little bit and catch the baseball. Yesterday's defense, Owen Miller struggling, Jimenez, who's been awesome, but Andres, a couple of those throws from second base in the dirt yesterday. You can't make those kind of mistakes and give extra outs to Minnesota. And the Twins will have a little payback on their minds because Cleveland kind of gave it to them a little bit last week in their place.
Yeah, the way the Guardians are built to play, they don't have a power hitter, so you cannot give a team extra outs. You have to do all of the little things right, and quite frankly, they did not do that well against the Red Sox. They didn't hit the ball the other way. They didn't even take a shot trying to hit the ball the other way in a couple instances. And the way this team's constructed, you can't do that.
No, and it was real frustrating yesterday because I thought Aaron Savali wasn't horrible. But you look at his stat line, you go, man, he got lit up. But no, again, he made pitches to J.D. Martinez on 2 separate occasions that should have been double play balls. I, for one, am not an Ahmed Rosario fan at shortstop. I know you have to have his bat in the lineup, but, man, I think there's such a better defensive team with Jimenez at short, Owen Miller at second, and Josh Naylor at first. Tonight, Franmil Reyes will sit because I think he's had struggles with Sonny Gray. They've got some depth, so guys can get breathers. You can rest a Franmil tonight. You can rest a Naylor yesterday. But to me, it starts tonight with McKenzie. Tristan is just, he's got to be better than he was last time out against the Twins, who hit him pretty hard. I think he will be. And we'll go from there. What's interesting with Minnesota, Dave, their pitching coach is leaving after this week.
LSU.
To go to college baseball to be LSU's pitching coach. That's a head scratcher.
Yeah.
And hopefully a distraction with the Twins, because a first place team losing a pitching coach to take a lesser position in college is a head scratcher.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you this. How important is it to find a guy that can hit behind Jose Ramirez? Because if I'm sitting in these pre-series meetings, we are rolling the ball up to Jose Ramirez to see how his cricket game is. Hit it on one hop. But it's got to be Franmil Reyes. He's got to be and I don't think Franmil's picking the ball up real well again. And that's, people will ask me, well, how's he swinging at that outside slider? Because he thinks it's a fastball. He's not picking the pitch up early enough.
Yeah, he had obviously the big at bat in Minnesota with the home run that tied the game, hit the ball to center field. He had a couple of base hits in the Boston series where he went the other way. We're seeing flashes of it, but you're right, way too much swing and miss. And I'm with you. If this team is going to take that next step and win the division, it has to be Franmil hitting in that 4 spot. I agree with you. I just don't understand, Dave, how these managers, including Rocco Baldelli, who did it in Minnesota last week, even pitched to Jose Ramirez with first base open at any point. Extra innings, I think it was, in one of the games in Minnesota. Runner started at second base. First base was open. Oscar Gonzalez in the on-deck circle, and they pitched to Jose, and he knocks an RBI single. It's amazing to me. I also think that Andres Jimenez eventually is going to have to be hitting 5th or higher in this lineup. I know he's hit 6th at times, 7th at times, but he's been so good that even though Jose hits from the left side and Andres is exclusive from the left side, Jose being a switch hitter, I think eventually there's a chance you might have to see Andres Jimenez moving up to 4th, 5th, something higher than 6th or 7th, because he's been awesome.
Yeah, and again, he's a young guy. He's only 23, 24. So, yeah, the future is bright for him. Before I let you go, Oscar Gonzalez, that's a guy, man, I saw him the first time I saw him in person. I'm like, this guy can hit. The one thing that I want to see, people are pitching him inside, and he hasn't figured out the hands yet, because a guy with his bat speed and his stature should be just eating up inside fastballs, and he hasn't figured that out yet. I think when he does, he becomes a real threat.
Oh, big time. And I think that in the minor leagues, he was such a home run only guy and kind of a feast or famine hitter. And now I think working with the staff at Chris Vallejo has done a fantastic job. He's hitting it the other way. I think he only has 2 home runs, which is okay if he still has that OPS over 800 and he's kind of spraying it everywhere. But I like what I've seen. You're right. I think he'll develop that kind of contact on inside fastballs. I think it will come. But what's been impressive is he's come up and he plays every single day.
Yep.
And this was a guy that was not even on left protected on the 40-man. Probably if there was a Rule 5 draft, would have been picked up by somebody else. So
he can cover.
I like what I've seen so far, and it would not surprise me that if they were to make some sort of blockbuster move or go get a real premium bat, that he would probably have to go in that deal, which would be sad. But when you have organizational depth like the Guardians do, that may be what ends up happening. We'll see.
He can cover the outside of the plate for a big guy too. I know he had the ball against the Red Sox that wasn't great, but his defense has been pretty good.
Yeah, better than expected. I know there's some times, Dave, the ball gets hit out there and you kind of get a little scared, but cannon for an arm, that throw the other night during the Quantrill start was pretty unbelievable. And you love seeing that because how many times, Dave, for years, did we just beg for some sort of outfield prospect to come up? And now you've got a couple in Quan and certainly Oscar that have delivered so far.
Matt Dery, as always, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Matt.
All right, Dave. Great to see you again.
Good seeing you. Have a good one. Matt Dery, 92.3 The Fan. Also, listen out for the Dery Brothers Guardian Cast. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.